Welcome back, coin lovers. The story of the 1973 UAE 1 Dirham is not just the story of a small round piece of metal, it is the story of an entire nation coming to life, breathing for the first time, and choosing how it wanted the world to see it. To understand this coin, we must travel back far before 1973, into the sands of the Arabian Peninsula, where for centuries people lived simple, resilient, and deeply cultural lives shaped by the desert, the sea, and their traditions. Before oil, before skyscrapers, before global fame, there was a land of Bedouins, pearl divers, fishermen, traders, and tribes who valued honor, generosity, hospitality, and unity above all else. In those days, the currency wasn't paper and metal, it was trust, trade, and the human bonds between people. And in that world, the Dala coffee pot, the iconic design printed on the 1973 dirham, was a symbol older and more meaningful than any modern emblem could ever be. The Dala represented welcome. When a traveler from a faraway land arrived at a tent in the middle of the desert, exhausted from the burning heat or the cold desert night, the very first thing he would be offered was coffee poured from a Dala Da'ahe, gesture of respect, peace, and brotherhood. In Arab culture, serving coffee was not simply hospitality, it was identity. And this heritage, older than any nation-state, older than any borders, became the soul of the UAE. Fast forward to the early 20th century, the region that is now the United Arab Emirates was known as the Trucial States, a collection of small sheikdoms along the Arabian Gulf, each with its own traditions and rulers but tied together through culture, trade, and British protection agreements. Life was tough, simple, and humble. Most people depended on pearl diving, fishing, and small-scale trade. The sea gave wealth, but it also demanded strength. Pearl divers risked their lives every season hoping to find the treasures hidden beneath the waves. Meanwhile, endless dunes shaped the lives of Bedouin tribes who mastered survival where most of the world would have perished. But everything changed in the mid-20th century when oil was discovered. Suddenly, a land once overlooked by the world found itself at the doorstep of transformation. Roads began replacing sandpaths, houses replaced tents. Electricity reached places where kerosene lamps had ruled for centuries, and the idea of forming a united nation became more real than ever before. In 1971, under the visionary leadership of Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, the United Arab Emirates was officially born. It was not just a political union, it was the beginning of an identity. The newly formed country needed symbols, flags, emblems, passports, and yes, currency. Currency is not just money. It is the face a nation shows to itself and to the world. What appears on a coin is a message to every citizen and every foreigner about what the nation values, what it celebrates, and what it calls its roots. So in 1973, when the UAE issued one of its earliest coins, the 1 Dirham, it had to choose what symbol would best represent the heart of the Emirates. And they chose the Dala. Not an oil rig, not a falcon, not a modern skyscraper. A Dala because before oil, before wealth, before modernization, there was culture, there was hospitality, there was identity. This coin carried the message that the world needed to know. The UAE may be a new nation, but its soul is ancient, rich, and deeply rooted in history. Printed on the coin were two dates, 1393 Hijri and 1973 Gregorian. The Hijri date connected the coin to Islamic tradition and Arab heritage, while the Gregorian year connected it to modern global society. This dual dating system symbolized the UAE, itself a nation balancing tradition and progress. When the first dirham circulated, they passed through the hands of fishermen, laborers, merchants, pearl traders, government workers, and ordinary families. Every person who held one held a piece of history, a piece of the UAE's earliest chapter. Unlike collectors today, people back then did not see it as valuable or rare, they saw it as part of life. They bought bread, dates, spices, and necessities with it. It jingled in the pockets of men walking through old souk. It moved from hand to hand in bustling markets filled with the smell of cardamom, incense, and fresh fish. Over time, as the UAE grew from a young nation to a global power known for innovation, luxury, architecture, commerce, and culture, these early coins quietly faded from daily use. Newer designs came, new generations arose, and the world forgot the humble beginning of the dirham. But collectors did not. To them, the 1973 dirham is not just old, it is meaningful. It represents the beginning of everything. It is the first breath of a nation that would later astonish the world. It is the foundation upon which the UAE's economic and cultural identity was built. It is a symbol of unity, heritage, and pride. Holding a 1973 dirham today is like holding a time machine. You feel the weight of the metal and imagine the world it came from, a world with fewer buildings but more stories, fewer cars but stronger bonds, fewer luxuries but deeper values. You imagine early Abu Dhabi before skyscrapers, early Dubai before global tourism, early Sharjah before museums, early Ras Al Khaimah before modern infrastructure, and you realize that this single coin silently witnessed everything. The UAE's rise from desert villages to futuristic cities, the construction of global icons like the Burj Khalifa, the transformation of the economy from oil-based to diversified, the rise of aviation, trade, finance, education, and tourism, the growth of culture, art, and innovation. All of it started in an era when this coin was one of the few national symbols people touched every day. Even globally, numismatists admire the coin for its simplicity and significance. Many say that among all early Gulf coins, the 1973 dirham stands out because it connects culture with national identity in the most elegant way possible. It does not try to impress, it simply tells a story. A story older than oil, older than the UAE itself. The story of who the Emirati people truly are. And that is why today, when collectors find this coin, they don't just see value, they see meaning. They feel history in their hands. They understand that this small round piece of metal is a witness to the UAE's journey, from sand dunes to skylines. And every scratch on the coin, every mark, every line tells a chapter of that journey. This is why the 1973 UAE 1 dirham is not just a coin, it is a memory, a message, a legacy. And as long as collectors keep it safe, its story will continue to live. And this story doesn't end here, because the journey of the 1973 UAE dirham continues far beyond its early purpose. As the nation grew, the identity hidden within this coin grew with it. To truly understand the depth of this coin's heritage, we must explore the cultural soul behind its chosen symbol, the Dala. Long before the modern world touched the Gulf, the rhythm of life in the desert was guided by the values that defined Arab society, generosity, loyalty, courage, and hospitality. A Bedouin would never let a traveler pass by his camp without offering coffee. The sound of the dala lid tapping against the pot was like a soft announcement. You are welcome. Sit, rest. You are safe here. This ritual wasn't performed for wealth or prestige. It was performed because it was part of being Arab. And when the UAE selected this symbol for its early dirham, it was declaring to the world that its roots mattered more than its rising modernity. The nation was stepping into a new age, but it was not willing to walk away from its past. This is what makes the 1973 dirham so unique. It was a conscious decision to honor tradition during the country's most important transformation. As oil revenue began reshaping the UAE's landscape, the years following 1973 became some of the most dramatic in Gulf history. Cities expanded. Ports grew. The education system evolved. Foreign workers arrived from every part of the world, bringing diversity, skills, and culture. Suddenly, the UAE wasn't just a desert land, it was becoming a home for millions. But through all this change, the small 1 dirham coin circulated through markets, shops, and pockets, quietly reminding people of the nation's original spirit. And the coin witnessed everything. It witnessed the construction of roads that connected remote villages. It witnessed the rise of airports that connected the UAE to the world. It witnessed the transformation of economies from simple pearl trading to global finance. It witnessed the establishment of cultural institutions, museums, universities, and modern governance. Every single moment of progress, every milestone, every architectural achievement, this coin was there, passing from hand to hand like a silent storyteller. But the story of this coin goes even deeper when we examine the leadership behind its era. Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, the founding father of the UAE, was not only a visionary leader, he was a man whose values aligned perfectly with it, symbol of the Dala. Sheikh Zayed believed in unity, generosity, peace, and hospitality. He believed a nation is built not only on wealth, but on character. And so, the Dala on the dirham reflected not only cultural history, but also the leadership philosophy guiding the nation forward. Many historians describe the early UAE as a nation of hope because, despite having limited resources at the beginning, the leaders of the Emirates believed in investing in their people and preserving their heritage. The dirham from 1973, therefore, became more than currency, it became a representation of a leader's dream and a nation's promise. As the years passed, collectors began noticing the rarity and importance of the early dirham series. The more modern the UAE became, the more valuable this small piece of early identity became. People began to realize that this coin was not merely a financial artifact. It was a snapshot of time, a moment frozen in metal, a memory that survived the transition from a humble beginning to global success. When collectors hold this 1973 dirham today, they are often struck by how simple the design is, yet how profoundly meaningful it becomes once you understand its context. Unlike modern coins filled with intricate details, the early dirham design was minimalistic because simplicity was part of the region's culture. Life in the desert was not about luxury. It was about survival, unity, and honor. And this coin embodies that simplicity. Another layer of history lies hidden within the dual dating system on the coin. The Hijri calendar connecting the coin to Islamic tradition, and the Gregorian date connecting it to a modern world together, show that the UAE always intended to stand, with one foot in tradition and the other in progress. This dual identity is precisely what shaped the nation's character. The UAE became one of the few countries in the Fenduidinibus world that mastered the balance of modernity without losing its soul. Even now, collectors, historians, and cultural enthusiasts across the world chase the 1973 dirham because it is considered a birth relic. Nations often have relics that define their early years. America has its 1793 cents. India has its 1947 coins. Pakistan has its 1948 issues. And the UAE has its 1973 dirham. These coins are not valuable because they are rare. They are valuable because they represent beginnings. The 1973 dirham also marked the foundation of the UAE's monetary system. Before it, the region used Indian rupees and the Qatar-Dubai rial. The introduction of the UAE dirham unified the financial system under a single identity. It was a step toward sovereignty, stability, and economic independence. Every early dirham circulated during the formation of policies, trade agreements, infrastructure projects, and cultural foundations that still shape the UAE today. Collectors often say that when they hold this coin, they feel as if they are holding the UAE before modern civilization wrapped around it, before Dubai's skyline pierced the clouds, before Abu Dhabi became a global capital, before Sharjah became a cultural hub, before Ras Al Khaimah, Fujairah, Al Quain, and Ajman began their modern transformations. The 1973 dirham saw the country when it was young, vulnerable, dreaming, and determined. And that is why its story cannot be told in a few words. It must be told the way a nation tells its origin story. Today, the Dala still remains a core symbol of Emirati culture. You see it in artworks, museums, airports, government buildings, and even on logos. It has become a visual code for Arab hospitality worldwide. But the first modern, Emirati object to carry that symbol was the 1973 dirham. It introduced the Dala to millions of new citizens and immigrants who arrived in the UAE seeking opportunities. For many, the first cultural symbol they saw of the UAE was not a flag, not a monument, not a building, it was this coin. The beauty of this coin lies in the fact that it connected strangers from across the world to the heritage of the land they arrived in. Someone buying bread, water, or daily supplies using a 1973 dirham unknowingly held a cultural lesson in their hand. They touched the symbol of hospitality in a land that welcomed them. This is why collectors say the 1973 dirham has a soul. It doesn't just belong to Emirati history. It belongs to every person who became part of the UAE story during the early decades. The more the UAE progresses, the more this coin becomes precious. Not because of rarity alone, but because of emotional and historical weight. It reminds people that great nations do not rise overnight. They rise through culture, values, unity, and identity. And this single piece of metal carries all of that within its circular boundary. And yet, even with all its historical depth, the 1973 UAE 1 dirham has another layer, a human story. A story that can only be understood by imagining the lives of the people who held it in its earliest days, because behind every early coin lies the silent history of the hands that carried it. To truly feel the soul of this dirham, imagine a man named Hamid, a young fisherman living in a small coastal village near Old Abu Dhabi in the early 1970s. His world is simple: the sea, the boats, the smell of salt, and the rhythm of tides. His father was a pearl diver, one of the last in the region before the industry faded. Hamid remembers his father diving into deep waters with only a rope tied around his waist and a basket for pearls, risking his breath every day for treasure that might never come. But they survived because survival itself was a treasure. When the UAE was formed in 1971, Hamid was a teenager watching his village slowly change. New buildings began to rise. New roads were being built. People from faraway lands started arriving. And then one morning in 1973, while buying dates from the souk, Hamid received a coin he had never seen before, a new silver-colored piece of metal with the symbol of a Dala on it. He held it in his hand quietly, turning it under the sunlight, noticing how the lines of the traditional coffee pot seemed to glow. The seller told him, "This is our new dirham, the coin of our new country." And in that moment, Hamid realized he was witnessing history, not in speeches or celebrations, but in the palm of his own hand. This was the first time he felt what it meant to belong to a nation. For him, the Dala was not decoration. It was a memory of his mother serving coffee to guests in their small home. It was a memory of nights around the fire, heating the pot, talking about life, telling stories passed down from ancestors. This coin was a mirror of his identity. Over the years, as the UAE began to transform, Hamid watched skyscrapers rise from the sand. He watched as airports brought the world closer, and as the country grew into something no one had imagined. The old markets slowly modernized, the small fishing villages expanded, and new opportunities shaped the lives of thousands. But Hamid kept one 1973 dirham safely wrapped in a cloth, hidden inside a wooden box he inherited from his father. That coin became his reminder of where he came from. He would take it out some nights, hold it, and smile at how a small piece of metal could hold a lifetime of memories. When Hamid grew older and had children of his own, he told them, "This coin is from the year our nation took its first step. It carries our past and our future." And when his son inherited the coin, he carried it with the same pride. This is the unseen story behind every early UAE dirham, the silent journeys they took through families, markets, pockets, tents, villages, and cities. Every early coin has a human story hiding inside it, and the 1973 dirham has thousands, maybe millions. Some sat in fishermen's pockets, some in pearl divers' hands, some in the hands of merchants trading spices and fabrics, some inside cash boxes of small shops with wooden doors and sand floors. Some went with travelers across the region. Some were saved, some were lost, some were forgotten. But each one became part of the UAE's rise. As the nation grew richer, stronger, and more global, these early coins slowly disappeared from everyday use. But the memories they carried did not fade. Today, collectors search for this 1973 dirham not because of its metal value, but because it contains emotional value, the story of a land that rose from the desert with dignity, unity, and vision. And even now, when someone holds this coin, they feel the soul of the UAE, its hospitality, culture, simplicity, and strength. They feel the footsteps of the past echoing through time. They feel the journey of Hamid, his father, their ancestors, and the millions of people whose lives shaped the nation. This is why the 1973 UAE 1 dirham is more than a coin. It is a living story, a cultural relic, a national heartbeat frozen in metal. And as long as collectors preserve it, the story of the UAE's beginnings will never be forgotten, because the dala on the coin continues to whisper the tale of a nation built on tradition, unity, generosity, and hope. The story of the 1973 UAE 1 dirham continues, but now we dive deeper into its creation, its physical soul, its journey through collectors' hands, and the tales it silently witnessed. The coin was minted using a process that combined both tradition and modern precision. The royal mint carefully struck each piece with a planchet made, primarily of cupronickel, durable alloy of copper and nickel, giving it that distinctive silver sheen while ensuring longevity against the harsh desert climate. The dala engraved on its face was not just an image. It was a symbol meticulously pressed, reflecting the ancient hospitality of the Emirates, a reminder of coffee served to guests under the shade of date palms. The minting process itself was a marvel at the time. High-pressure dyes, precise alignment, and repeated inspections ensured that each dirham would be uniform yet rich in detail, a tiny testament to a nation's pride and precision. Collectors today chase the 1973 dirham not merely for its metal content, but for its story, rarity, and emotional resonance. Over the decades, the value of this coin has evolved dramatically. What was once everyday pocket change is now a prized artifact, sought after in auctions and private collections worldwide. Coins in uncirculated condition, with original luster intact, fetch higher prices, while even circulated pieces carry historical weight, each scratch a memory of the hands that once held it. The craze among collectors is fueled not just by scarcity, but by the desire to own a tangible piece of UAE history, a relic from the very dawn of the nation's financial independence. The UAE currency itself has evolved since those early days. From the initial dirhams minted in the 1970s, the nation gradually transitioned through various issues, updating security features, designs, and denominations. The story of this evolution is inseparable from the nation's growth. As airports, skyscrapers, and trade hubs emerged, so did modern coins and notes, each reflecting new ambitions while honoring heritage. Early dirhams became benchmarks, reminders of simpler times when a single coin could hold the weight of identity, tradition, and hope. And yet, human stories continued to accompany these coins. Imagine Aisha, a young school teacher in Sharjah in 1975, receiving her first dirham as a salary from the local government. She treasured it not for its metal, but for what it represented: independence, respect, and the empowerment of women in a changing society. That coin, passed down through decades, eventually found its way into a collector's album, carrying Aisha's story silently alongside Hamed's. Another tale belongs to Faisal, a spice merchant in Dubai, whose 1973 dirham slipped into the folds of a ledger during a busy market day. It remained unnoticed for years, only to be discovered decades later, reminding him and the world that coins are not merely money, but witnesses to life itself. This is why the 1973 UAE 1 dirham is so revered. It is metal intertwined with memory, currency entwined with culture, and value that goes beyond the financial. Each coin tells multiple stories of minting mastery, the nation's financial milestones, collectors' passions, and the everyday lives of Emirates, who shaped and were shaped by the rise of their country. When someone holds this coin today, they do not just feel copper and nickel. They feel history, family, tradition, and pride, the heartbeat of a nation preserved in a tiny, gleaming circle of metal. The journey of the UAE dirham finally comes full circle. From the first 1973 silver-tone coin to today's modern issues, the dirham has evolved not just in design, but in the story it carries. Modern coins are crafted with advanced minting technologies, sharper designs, and security features that reflect a country that has grown into a global hub of trade, innovation, and culture. Yet, amidst these innovations, the essence remains. The Dala, the falcon, and other symbols continue to honor Emirati heritage, connecting every generation to its past. Numismatists and collectors treasure both old and new dirhams. Rare coins, misstrikes, and early issues have become the crown jewels of collections, with auctions sometimes drawing worldwide attention. Every coin tells a story of fishermen, merchants, teachers, and families who held them, preserved them, and passed them down. Each piece, whether old or new, is a witness to the UAE's transformation from a desert federation into a modern, prosperous nation. Even as the dirham evolved in metal composition, design, and circulation, the human stories remained central. Families kept coins as heirlooms, sharing memories with younger generations. Some coins traveled abroad with emigrants, carrying pieces of home to distant lands. Others were tucked into cash boxes of old shops, waiting decades to be discovered by eager collectors. In every coin, the soul of the nation pulses its unity, hospitality, resilience, and vision. And so, the tale of the UAE Dirham, starting from the humble 1973 issue, through decades of evolution, collectors' passions, and families' memories, concludes not as an ending, but as a living story. A story preserved in metal, passed through hands, and cherished by those who understand that coins are more than falan. Money, they are history, identity, and legacy. If you enjoyed this journey through the UAE's numismatic heritage, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, CoinAgeEra, for more stories, histories, and fascinating coin tailies.